you can take Figma files, you can take a doodle, a drawing, and use Gen AI to interpret that, to pull out the intent and transform that into that structured content. So it doesn't matter what you know about Drupal. You can now get that task done.
Howdy, everyone. I'm your host, Todd Nienkerk. Marketing can be a delight if it's done well. It can also be annoying or even creepy if it's done poorly. We've all wondered, for example, if our phones are listening to our conversations. That's because of marketers' access to our personal data and sometimes their lack of access to relevant data. Marketing is undergoing a fundamental shift. People aren't giving up data like they used to. Cookies are going away, and 2% conversion rates just aren't cutting it. Modern marketers need to collect first-party data directly from users who exchange it for something of value, helpful content, a discount code, or a rewards program membership. I talked with Deanna Ballew, Senior VP of Digital Experience Platforms and AI at Acquia, about this new approach to marketing. Deanna's journey began in 2004 at Heightened, a software company that specialized in digital asset management software. Heightened began in 1948 as an engraving company, then pivoted to print, then pivoted again to software. In Deanna's words, Heightened was a very innovative company that wanted to cannibalize themselves before they themselves were cannibalized. For example, they started their SaaS business before their print business started to decline. Deanna served in a variety of roles at Heightened: front-end engineer, QA tester, project manager, development and infrastructure team leader, eventually working her way up to chief innovation officer. About a year later, Heightened was acquired by Acquia, and their DAM, digital asset management tool, became a part of Acquia's digital experience platform. We'll pick up the conversation when I asked, given this journey from developer to project manager to executive, at what point did she have to start thinking like a marketer?
Yeah, that was actually a pivotal turning point. So digital asset management is a solution for marketers. So marketing departments and teams use our solution. And in 2015, when I put on my product hat, I actually started to go out and learn about what our customers and our marketers actually needed to do and the problems they needed to solve. And so I just dug right in deep with our own marketing team, Jake Athey, who has been on this whole ride and journey through Heightened and Acquia with me, learning from him of what he was trying to do with marketing in general, and started learning about what are marketers trying to do? What are they trying to achieve? How are they going to drive conversion rates? How do they actually deliver and innovate themselves in the changing dynamic of social media and mobile devices? And now within Gen AI, like they have to actually react. You think about COVID and the pandemic, every one of these big macro changes in our society has an intersection with marketing, which is why this makes MarTech such an exciting area for me to focus in on, is because then we have to react to that and we have to be agile enough to do things differently, to adopt and to try new things. And then therefore, taking that back into the products that I actually help design and deliver value to is, okay, now what are we going to do differently? If the marketers have different goals because their users and customers are getting information differently, then we have to deliver tools and functionality for them to do things differently. And AI has been part of the conversation probably since, for me, 2009. And it has a big hype cycle, but now with Gen AI, we're at a different level of exponential growth in usage and just the ability to explore with it. So I guess that's, diving into marketing, going to the conferences, learning from marketers, really started in 2015, and then understanding that marketers are really early adopters of technology. And then how do I bring those intersections together?
So that's one of the most interesting things that I want to cover in our conversation is looking at some of these technologies and trends through a marketing lens, but not necessarily through a marketing person's lens, if that makes sense. Because I feel that not to be sort of cynical about it, but I think a lot of people who are not in a marketing space do tend to get a little turned off by marketing speak and by that kind of world. Although it is extremely important, the work that's being done there and how much it not only drives the technology that we use, but it drives economies and it drives a lot of trends, and it underlies a lot of the work that we all do, even if we don't think of the work that we do as driven by marketing. it still is, and it's just a fact of everything that we do. And so your perspective is really fascinating here, having gone through these different phases in your career and seeing how it's all tied together by marketing, and it all kind of focuses on that lens. You mentioned generative AI. What's interesting about that perspective, so many people, when they think of generative AI, they immediately think of things like content creation. So writing a blog post, creating an image with Midjourney, here's a crazy video that they saw generated by something, chat bots, stuff like that. That's what they think of when they think of generative AI. But there's so much more that generative AI can do. And you've been posting a lot about that recently, things like privacy, accessibility, and lots of other things related to marketing. So I'm curious, how do you see generative AI being useful in areas beyond just simply content creation and chat GPT?
Yeah. Well, maybe before we go in that direction, maybe to hit on your first point of like the viewpoint of marketing as not a marketer. And I tend to think about the marketing that hits me as a person, right? We all interact with marketing at different points in our day, and sometimes we're bombarded by it, and sometimes it's like it's at the right time, right? Yes, I do need this problem solved, or I was looking for this thing, or when I'm going to actually find something, like I'm able to find it and then I get it, and I'm like, what a wonderful experience that was. Like it's something that I'm going to recommend to somebody else because it was such a great experience or ease of use to find something and then to actually get it and to experience that product. Like it can be done in a way that delights you. Like marketing can be a delight, and you can say, oh my goodness, I didn't know it could be, my journey to finding a product or a solution could be that great. It can also be something that just creeps us out as a person. Like, oh my goodness, is my phone listening to me?
Sure.
Like, what is going on? And so when I think about marketing from my angle, I think about the underlying technology and data that powers that experience that we're giving, that we're putting in the hands of marketers that then hit us as a person. And so where I see my role coming in is, how do I give marketers better tools so they're not having to be creepy and it's actually having to be more helpful and in the moment that I need it or where I'm looking for it. So I think what we've seen, especially over the past, decade with marketing, is in all of the different channels that people are on, is we're just getting bombarded and the data's been harvested, and my personal data is everywhere. And then you have all of these data breaches, and now what are we going to do with that? And as a consumer, a decade ago, or maybe 15 years ago, we were just giving our data away. We're like, oh yeah, we'll sign up for this thing and this thing and this thing, and sure, you want my email address, I'll give it to you. You want my phone number, I'll give it to you. Now I will say, I probably will give you my Hotmail account from 2 decades ago. I'm not going to give you my personal account to get something because I don't want to be bombarded in that way, shape, or form. But at the same time, we gave marketers the tools to bombard us. Therefore, that's what they're doing. And then they're being successful by getting a 2% conversion rate. So now where I see this intersection going, as we as users and people know the importance of our data, and we're educated, we're going to keep our data to ourselves, marketers need to now find a way to have a value exchange to get my data, which is going to have a better experience for me. But then how can I now enable marketers where a 2% conversion rate is not good enough, right? Like, how can I make them want to have productive customer journeys so that they're actually doing this in a way where the people I'm hitting, I'm seeing, the 80% conversion rate, I'm getting to them, I'm building a relationship, I have loyalty from my customers, they're returning customers willing to give me that first party data. This is the transition point, and I see myself in the space that I am with digital experience platform and other marketing tools as enabling marketers to provide maybe better marketing and to create a better society or experience for myself as a consumer and as a user.
Do you feel that most people in this space have that same attitude, or do you feel that you're an outlier?
In the space of marketing, or in the space of
in marketing? Yeah, because that's a refreshing attitude. I haven't really heard anybody express that before in quite that way, and it's kind of unique. I feel like most people, I shouldn't say most, I don't know, a lot of people that I've spoken to in the marketing space, they tend to speak very clinically about marketing. They just kind of see it as a science, as numbers. They're hitting certain goals, and that's it. And it's not necessarily about they're not really thinking about the experience of it and the humanity of it necessarily.
Yeah.
Is that a change in the industry?
It is definitely a shift that is happening in the industry. And the shift it is being driven though by those big macro trends. It's being driven because it is not we're not giving up our data as a consumer the way that we used to give it up, and so marketers have to change. And one of those ways that we're changing is with trends like content marketing and making sure that we're giving good content that are going to engage people, things that are going to rank high in Google SEO. Like the way that Google handles SEO means that you actually have to have content that is engaging and organic and people are appreciative. And then when you get into like as cookieless future comes along, you need to be able to find a way for users to want to give you that first party data. So how do you do that? Well, you build a relationship with them as marketers. You build communities, you build loyalty programs, you get to know your customers, you become helpful, and you start thinking about the whole customer experience. So it is definitely a shift that we're seeing with our own customers as they think about marketing as a digital experience and the experience that you're giving a customer versus just the activity of marketing. I even go to our CMO that joined Acquia. She doesn't call herself the chief marketing officer because marketing can be like a set of operational things. She calls herself the chief market operation, the CMO market. Like this is a thing. This is an actual strategy that we're doing to create an experience in the market versus a set of activities. So it's a shift that is happening with our customers and those marketing departments that we are talking to, driven because they're not able to get at the data that they could have otherwise.
And that's a function of increased concerns and awareness around privacy and laws around privacy. Yes. So it's not necessarily consumer awareness. It's also there are laws in Europe and other places that are saying you can't do this anymore. And so the tools are having to change to adjust to these laws. Consumer and personal awareness around privacy and use of their own data and savviness is increasing. Expectations are changing around that. And so we're marching towards this cookieless future, which we'll get to. And as a result, the techniques that marketers have to use to convert, meaning ultimately sell and make money doing whatever they're supposed to do for their organization, whether that's sell a product, get a donation, enroll a student, whatever that organization is ultimately supposed to do. And there are other techniques that they have to rely on now, other tools, Google Tag Manager, maybe AI plays a role in this. So to rewind a bit back to generative AI and some of the things that it can do, does generative AI play a role in this new approach to marketing that can no longer rely on just hoovering up mass amounts of data and playing the volume game with numbers and saying, let's just get millions and millions of email addresses and a whole bunch of user data, and we'll get a 2% conversion rate. And with that 2%, we'll make our money and we'll achieve our goals. And that's good enough.
Yeah, I mean, to your point of, where does Gen AI fit in some of the marketing activities? I would definitely, the content creation, you hit on that. Like, how might they create content faster? That has been something that we have seen a trend, and, probably the volume and velocity of content that's now being created for marketing teams has increased, and they keep getting asked to create more content with less money, less investment. And that's been a huge challenge. Now, the other big challenge, though, for them is what content is actually performing. So even though Gen AI could create all of this different type of content, you still don't know which content is actually performing. And you run the risk of creating too much content and then really muddying your brand, right? Every piece of content that you publish is building a brand awareness. And if you can build your brand awareness, that will also help you capitalize on getting your conversions and your goals. So, brand and content go hand in hand. So where, Gen AI can really come into play here is helping marketers craft content. And I'm going to use the word craft now versus create. Craft content that will resonate with their target audience and adhere to their brand guidelines and compliance, so that every piece of content out there hopefully is actually more engaging for their targeted users and keeping their brand alive, and not just making that brand be very generic and proliferating that across the world. So those are the two, that intersection that I see a lot of marketers starting to use Gen AI and that content creation. It's those initial drafts, those initial ideas, what's going to resonate to create better content. So that's like on the first side of it. The flip side of it, I would also say, is that targeting then of how do you get that right content in front of the right person at the right time. I don't know if you've heard that, but that is a very key thing as we think about marketing technology. How do we actually allow marketers to get the right content in the right at the right place at the right time? And as a human, like, I want that too. Like, I want to see the things I want to see at the moment I want to see it, not be bombarded.
Right, because it doesn't matter how good the content is, it has to actually be relevant to you, and it has to be delivered to you at a time when it makes sense.
Exactly.
Because if you're not at a point where you are ready to make a purchase or enroll or make a donation, then that content may be fantastic, but it's at the wrong time. And so it's not going to lead to that final step.
Yeah, and it actually can almost do the reverse too. And you might have experienced this, where it leaves a bad experience for that brand. If all of a sudden I'm bombarded in the wrong way, right? I'm like, ooh, why am I getting all of these messages? Or why is this message being tailored, let's say for a man versus a woman, and I'm getting this, right? I'm all of a sudden like, I associate a poor experience now possibly with this brand if it's not done in a way that is deliberate and relevant, because so much content can come at me. Like, if you don't do this, it actually can have a negative impact on your conversion rate and your brand awareness. So very much so, like making sure that it's at that right space. And that's where we can get into, Gen AI more in that moment of saying, okay, if we can actually look at the data that we do know about somebody, let's say the anonymous data that we're able to say the region, the place that they're in, maybe things that the other things they've clicked on your site, then can I actually curate and content and create new content in the moment? Let's just say the headline on your website. Could I modify that headline dynamically when that page comes up to do that? But then there's also all of the other techniques that we've had for years with AI, with ML models for recommended content, recommended products. All of that can come into play. And the piece where Gen AI can really fit on top of that is understanding the unstructured content that a human or a user might be putting into something. So let's say a question in a search box. Like, you could really break down your natural languages that we are entering as people now into more structured content or data that then can power these recommendation engines. And that's where you can start to see this transformation in this user experiences using Gen AI techniques to help improve that overall user experience in the moment for these customers and for your users.
So, for example, that might take the form of a better search experience, because people can ask more natural questions or not have to play that game where you're thinking of like, how do I search in the way that the search engine wants me to search, but rather how do I just search the way that I just want to say the thing that I want to say, or ask the thing that I want to ask, and let it figure it out rather than me try to figure it out. So that's one way that Gen AI can help improve that experience, but also changing things dynamically on the page based on the behaviors that the site has tracked so far anonymously, by having aggregated patterns of behavior anonymously over massive data sets, and being able to deduce certain patterns based on what it's observed about me anonymously so far. People like me that have done things that I've been doing so far tend to also do these other things, and so therefore it will show me these things, and it'll adjust the page accordingly, and maybe it'll reorder the content in certain ways and adjust the wording in these ways and present things in a slightly different way, and that will create a better experience for me that is more likely to convert.
Yeah, yep. Those are all good examples of how Gen AI might be leveraged in order to create a good experience. The other area, though, is also just in your day-to-day use of, let's say, technology through chat UX experiences. So if you can think about, right now, for anybody who's a Drupal user, the amount of clicks that it takes to set up a content type. You have to set up the content type, you have to give it a name, then you have fields, you have values, you have all of these clicks that you're actually doing in these tasks, and you have a learning curve to learn all of that specific Drupal actions of how to actually do that. With Gen AI, we can take unstructured data and create all that structured data. So we could take a Figma file, and this is the stuff that we are in prototyping right now. You can take Figma files, you can take a doodle, a drawing, and use Gen AI to interpret that, to pull out the intent and transform that into that structured content. So it doesn't matter what you know about Drupal. You can now get that task done because you now just move from this point and click multi-step learning that you need to do to complete this thing to saying, I have this vision of this design. Now go get me started. Now, do you have to change it and configure it? Most likely, but you no longer have a blank slate. I don't think anyone likes getting a blank page, right? You already have something that you can start on. So it kind of, It helps remove that blank slate from this piece.
That was part 1 of my conversation with Deanna Ballew, Senior VP of Digital Experience Platforms and AI at Acquia. Please join us for part 2, which will focus on the cookieless future and the ways AI can integrate with CMSs to help marketers create more localized and accessible content more efficiently.